All right, good evening. We're going to go ahead and call to order the workshop session of the governing body of the city of Lampasas. A couple of housekeeping items real quick. If you're safely distanced from the person around you and you wish to remove your mask, you may do so at this time. So that you can hear me, I'm going to take mine off. Also, for those watching at home, if you wish to call in, the phone number to reach us is 512-556-0332. First item on the workshop agenda this evening is discussion and presentation from Heart of Texas Defense Alliance.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Manager. I appreciate the chance to come over and see y'all, talk to you a little bit about what's been going on. I'll give you a couple of quick updates on Fort Hood. And I may have just screwed that up. No, there it is. As you know, Secretary of the Army came. We had a couple of community engagements with her. Some of it was related to what you've seen in the press on Fort Hood, some of it's related to normal visiting. Fort Hood will release at some point the full story of what's going on. All I'm going to tell you is there's a lot of stuff on social media. It ain't all true. We'll all see what comes out when the investigation is finally done and the prosecution of the one suspect left up in Waco is.
If you would, please raise the microphone to your mouth so that we're able to get you for the recording. Thank you. If you would, please
But other than
raise
that,
the microphone to your mouth so
Giraffe
that
Land, I
we're able
believe,
to get you
did
for
a
the
couple
recording.
chances for
Thank
community
you.
engagement with folks. Is it too loud? But other than that, Giraffe Land, I believe, did a couple chances for community engagement with folks. Is it too loud? All right, ma'am. Sorry. If you remember, we do DEAG projects, the Defense Economic Adjustment Assistance Grant projects that are run by the Texas Military Preparedness Commission. The one we're going to put in it'll open 1 September, close 30 October. That one will actually add access ramps from State Highway 9 up to what's called Tank Destroyer Boulevard on the west side of Fort Hood where the railhead is. What it will do is remove some of that traffic off 190 where trucks go in and out of Fort Hood. There's about 86,000 trucks on average a year that go in and out of Fort Hood, hauling everything from ammunition to food and everything else in between. It'll give the ability to move that truck access ramp to State Highway 9, which will reduce the amount of high explosives and other hazardous materials that goes up through housing areas and a nearby school. It also kind of facilitates the long-term setup of a multimodal facility on the west side that would benefit kind of the western side of Fort Hood, potential for industries to come in and locate there and use a joint use railhead to move stuff in and out of the area. Central Texas in this area is all unique in that it sits in the heart of what's called the Texas Triangle. I'm sure everybody's heard it called that before, from Dallas to San Antonio and down to Houston. But that's 77% of the Texas economy sits in that triangle. So this location in Central Texas is half equal distance, almost to all three, but it's a half day's truck drive by a commercial truck. So you don't have to do overnights, trucks go up and back. So for the long-term growth, it potentially has some great economic benefits, especially if we can get 281 at some point to become interstate standards. The one thing I will say, you have quite a few military members that live in your community, and I'll show you in just a second what it is this year. The Defense Authorization Act that was passed by both the House and the Senate earlier this summer has passed. They'll get a 3% raise. It also provides for an increase in active duty strength by about 5,000 folks. One thing that was in the bill, and you've probably all seen it in the media as well, is renaming bases named after Confederate general officers. Both of those bills passed the House and the Senate with enough to override a veto. So I would expect that at some point there will be a commission that changes all the base names that are, whoever has issues with whatever names. So it's probably a matter of when, not if, that happens. We'll see where it goes. That's politics and the way it goes. Except any questions, I'll go on the next one. As you know, once a year we pull data down on where the soldiers and their family members live around Fort Hood. This is the chart for this year. I pulled the data back at the beginning of June. It's based on what's called TRICARE data, where they get their medical care. So that address has to be accurate for them to get the care. So it's about 95% accurate, and I say that because every month there's a number of people that move in and out of Fort Hood. What you'll see is the orange boxes are the counties, and the tan are the cities, and then the blue, of course, is Fort Hood. If you look at Lampasas County, for example, in the three-county region, there's 160,000 either active duty soldiers, a family member of an active duty soldier, a retiree, or a family member of a retiree, or a surviving spouse. Of that 160,000 plus, just under 1% live in the city of Lampasas, but it's almost 15% of your population when you look at and this is based on 2019 census estimates. If you look at Lampasas County, it's even more significant. It's got 2.3% of that 160K, but it's about 22% overall of the county. The 26% you see in the middle is anybody not in the city of Lampasas, but in Lampasas County, which would be probably predominantly Kempner and the growing population over on that side of the county. And you can see the other cities listed around there. The last 3 years, we have seen a continuing demographic of about 1% each year that are moving further away from Killeen. They moved to Lampasas, they're moving to Coppers Cove, they're moving to Temple and Belton, and even south down towards Georgetown and Williamson County in that area down there. I don't know if that will continue, but it's been that way for about the last 3 years. So that just kind of gives you an idea of where they live and kind of their impact on the various communities around here. If you have any questions on that, I will go to the next one. This is really just to update you on kind of what goes on at Fort Hood. Even though we technically were out of Iraq in 2011 and we left Afghanistan in 2014, there's been residual numbers of troops in each one of those locations, and that's being downsized now. What you'll see on the chart is there's a red line that goes across the center, and that's the percentage of Fort Hood soldiers that are deployed, and that goes to the bar or the scores on the right side of the screen. The dark green is the actual soldiers that are deployed by numbers, and that goes for the left side, and then the light green's what they're at home, but they're not really at home. They're at the National Training Center, they're at training on Fort Hood, they're at schools or other places. But for the op tempo or the operational tempo for the Army hasn't really changed. The soldiers stay at about average 16% deployed every month. And that will continue as we go forward. There's another brigade that will deploy this fall, and so it will increase again. I only put this out so people understand, although the soldiers aren't always going to Iraq and Afghanistan, now they go to Europe, they go to Korea, and then they still go down to Iraq and Afghanistan on a limited basis or some other place in the world. In fact, a lot of them over the last few months have been deployed in support of COVID. The hospitals out of Fort Hood were deployed to New York initially, and now they're working in San Antonio. So they've gone around a couple of different places to do some of that. But that really is, the soldiers and family members still have a lot of turbulence because of that operational tempo. One thing that is sort of near and dear to the county's heart and to the city, I'm sure to a degree, is the number of veterans. And with that comes the Texas Disabled Veterans exemptions that affects the ability to raise taxes off some of the properties in each of the municipalities. I just want to give you a kind of an overview of where it's going in this area. This chart is based on VA data that I obtained, goes out to 2044, so it's projection for the next 25 plus years. Overall, the U.S. veteran population will decline at the rate you see there, just under 2% a year, and that's due to the non-military population growing, and it's a smaller military population. And then a lot of the older World War II veterans are primarily gone. Vietnam veterans are reaching the senior levels, and the largest veteran population now is the global war on terror folks. In Texas, the population only declines by just under 1% over that 45 or up to 2044. But in Central Texas, it grows. Part of that's the quality of life, the low cost of living that's here, and also the locations next to all the services. 6 major hospitals in the area, and it's close to Austin, close to Dallas, and all the other amenities that people like to go. So what you'll see is that the Central Texas veteran population will continue to grow. More heavily in Bell County, but also in Coryell and Lampasas a little bit. One thing that's interesting is over that time frame, you'll have 1/4 of the veterans will now become female veterans, which is it's a function of when they began to enroll in the Army as soldiers instead of being in the Women's Army Corps previously in the mid-70s. They're all reaching that population. So your veterans organizations or service clubs are going to have to adjust the population they support because they're not going to have 1 in 4 people will be female and just need different services in some cases. And the veterans hospitals will have to take on different cares for them as well. The last thing other than the fast facts I'll talk to you about is I-14. Congressman Williams, Congressman Carter, and the other congressmen in Texas along I-14 did endorse and co-sponsor the bill. The bill was included in the FAST Act in the House of Representatives on the 1st of July, and it's now in the Senate. The only thing I bring this up to you is you'll see the route that goes from Fort Bliss essentially all the way to Georgia, but passes through here. TxDOT's already committed about $500 million in Central Texas to improving the I-14 US 190 corridor to interstate standards. It's already interstate standards between Coppers Cove and Belton, but doing the other areas as well. There's a project that will expand the 190 bypass around Coppers Cove and then a mile into Lampasas County to 4 lanes. It actually includes a bridge over the highway that you have to hit the stoplight on the south side of Cove now. That'll start this fall. I think it's a 2-year project to do that, but then there's other phases of it that go further east and west. If you see Senator Cornyn and Senator Cruz or one of their staff members, I would encourage you to ask them to support the I-14 legislation. It is no cost, essentially, because it's designating the route. It doesn't provide funding. The funding comes through the Department of Transportation to the U.S. Departments of Transportation in the various states. So it doesn't cost anything in this case, but it's that designation that then provides the long-term ability to get funding to improve the road all the way through. The last thing I'll talk to you about is the Fort Hood Fastbacks. This is what numbers are. We are here today. We've stabilized at about 37,000 soldiers. You'll see this month we're just under because they've started allowing some of the members to PCS or move. Family members have stayed consistently about 50,000. It's 51,000 one month, 49,000 the next. And the contract numbers have stayed pretty much the same. The deployment numbers are fairly low right now. It's 2,200, but as I said, we'll have another brigade of about 4,000 that will leave in a couple of months to go to their next mission in Europe. North Fort Hood has a population of about 2,400, and that goes up and down, but it stays anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 National Guard or Reserve soldiers that are mobilizing or demobilizing for some mission. They do have COVID restrictions in place on those folks. When they come in, they're quarantined in a bubble, essentially, for lack of a better term, because they come from all over the U.S. when those units come in. So they're kept in a like-type bubble of that unit. And then after they've met the quarantine, they're now allowed to move about. And then the same thing happens right before they deploy. They're kept in another bubble there. AFEs and some other folks are running services to them when they're locked up like that and can't get away. But they seem to be doing okay with that. Subject to any questions you have, Mayor or City Council, that's all I had for you today.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Item number 3 on the agenda is discussion and presentation from WCID.
Madam Mayor and Council, I'm Paul Wilburn, Board Chairman of the Lampasas County Water Control and Improvements District, we'll refer to as WCID. First thing I want to do this evening is give you a brief history of our organization, and then we'll talk about the challenges in front of us. Those being particularly upgrading of dams to meet high hazard standards. Lampasas County WCID is the local sponsor for operation and maintenance of 9 flood control dams on the tributaries to Sulphur Creek upstream of Lampasas. Our co-sponsor is the Hill Country Soil and Water Conservation District. The WCID was created by order of the Lampasas County Commissioners Court, and its board met for the first time in May of 1956. A watershed work plan was developed between the local sponsors and the Soil Conservation Service of the USDA, calling for construction of flood retention structures on the Sulphur Creek watershed. The plan was executed on April 25th of 1957, less than 30 days before the monumental flood of May 12th of that year. The present-day 9 dams were built between 1958 and 1961 with federal funding through the USDA's Soil Conservation Service, which now, by the way, is referred to as the Natural Resource Conservation Service, or NRCS. The flood of May of '57 was the 8th and last flood in Lampasas. These floods resulted in loss of lives and substantial loss in property. Since that time, rain events have occurred without these dams, most likely there would have been flood waters in the courthouse. Those dates of rainfall events like that were 2007 and 2018 most recently. The NRCS website estimates that the annual benefits to the Sulphur Creek watershed alone from these dams is just over $1 million per year. From 1961 forward, the function of the WCID has been maintenance and operation of flood control dams, comprised of maintaining vegetative cover, control of brush and weeds, maintenance of fences to control grazing, and periodic inspection. There was a period of 15 to 20 years wherein the WCID board became relatively inactive. The result was 8 of the 9 dams becoming badly overgrown with brush and timber, so that their inspection was difficult. The present-day WCID board began a process of curing this deferred maintenance in 2014. 2 entities were invaluable in this process: the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board for funding, and an organization called Moore Watershed Services, which performed most of the actual work. From 2014 till the present, a total of $408,121 has been spent on fencing, brush control, timber removal, and spraying of regrowth brush. The WCID's funds covered $39,275 of that total, with the balance of $368,846 paid by the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board. The City of Lampasas and Lampasas County contributed a combined total of $39,000 to the WCID during this period. Flood control dams are rated in terms of hazard classifications by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Hazard classification pertains to the amount of property and lives protected by a dam. Therefore, as population increases and development occurs downstream of a dam, its classification can change and ultimately be classified as high hazard. This change does not result from a deterioration of the physical structure. 3 of our dams, those being numbers 5, 7, and 9 on your map, were originally built to high hazard standards. The other 6 were built to significant hazard standards. Today, 5 of those 6 have been reclassified to high hazard because of development downstream. The physical requirements for upgrade to high hazard standards can include enlarging the primary spillway and the emergency spillways, raising the elevation of the crest of the dam, and changing the back slope. Each dam would have specific recommendations resulting from engineering studies. Sources I've read and spoken with cite engineering and construction costs ranging from $3 million to $10 million per site, per dam, depending on the size and, of course, the modifications required. The 2019 state legislature passed Senate Bill 8, providing $150 million to the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board for repair, rehab, and upgrade of flood control structures. There are 622 dams in the state of Texas that are classified as high hazard, with only 123 currently meeting those standards. One source estimates it will take over $1.5 billion to complete the upgrade of the remaining 499. The Lampasas County WCID submitted an application to the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board on April 30th of this year for funding, engineering, and upgrade of what we consider our most critical dam in need of upgrade. The estimated cost that we were advised to put on the application was $5 million. The local match, which would be 1.75% of the total of the cost, at $5 million would be $87,500. I'm told by Steve Bednars, a program administrator and engineer for the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board, that recent projections of costs have been coming in higher such that our project could be bumping up to the $10 million range. Therefore, we should prepare for a local match requirement of $150 to maybe as much as $200,000. Mr. Bednarz estimates a funding answer to our application in fiscal year 2022 with design to begin in September of next year and our match due in calendar year 2023. All of that's fairly vague as far as timing is concerned. We currently have $45,000 in the bank. That's the end of my presentation, and I'll now entertain any questions that you might have. I'm sorry?
Which dam number is the one that needs to be upgraded?
Did you,
Which dam number?
for this upgrade, number 6. And you can see, if you look at the map, that dam is the 4th in a series. 1, 2, and 5, I believe. No, 1, 2, and 3. If there were an overflow from any or all of those 3 dams, it would need to be retained by site number 6, and that's the reason that we prioritize that site. And it's a big dam.
What, maybe you can just explain to me, I'm not really a great construction guy, but what could cost $10 million in dirt?
Well, that's an interesting question, Mike. You likely would have quite a bit of dirt work, significant equipment use. I mentioned that these upgrades would likely require an increase in the size of the primary spillway, and I need to explain what that is. Each of these dams has what in country terms most of us are familiar with as a drawdown tube. In other words, there's a structure that on the upstream side of the dam that is connected to a pipe that goes vertical and then goes horizontal at a slope and runs out the back side of the dam. The purpose of that thing is to maintain a water level in front of the dam, so that if in fact you have a big rain event and if this is the level of the emergency spillway on the end of the dam, you really don't want water running around there except in an absolute emergency. That primary spillway is at a level like this and it draws that water down over time. Well, a lot of these things have 24-inch pipes through the base of the dam. And in some cases, that 24-inch pipe would need to be increased to a 36 or a 48-inch pipe. The point being that the location of that pipe through that dam is deep within the foundation of that dam and would need to either be replaced with another one or that pipe dug out and that whole system rebuilt. When that's done, oftentimes there's a coffer dam built upstream so that any runoff would be diverted completely around the dam that's being worked on. And while I'm not an engineer and I haven't worked on the budget for one of these things, I hope maybe that gives you a glimpse as to why that process could be so expensive. That's just one part of it. The back slope on most of these dams is a 2-to-1 grade. And the recommendations that I've seen in reports from the NRCS is that slope ought to be changed to a 3-to-1 grade. Well, most of these things have a good bit of riprap on the upstream and some on the downstream side that's boulders. And so, you know, you're talking about moving all of that, increasing the earth and compaction and putting that stuff back. Interestingly enough, when these dams were finished in the last one in 61, the total of what was spent by the USDA at that time, translated into present day dollars, was about $10 million. So, you know, you're talking about upgrading one or two of them for what it cost to build them all back then.
Council have any additional questions for Paul? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Item number 4, discussion and updates regarding fiscal year 2021 budget.
Mayor and Council, as it relates to the previous two presentation, I'd just like to remind you that the city's membership in the Heart of Texas Defense Alliance is included in the FY21 budget as well as the WCID funding. I'd also note that, just for your information, I think we mentioned this when we did the CIP report, but we did at least reference that high hazard upgrade in the CIP report. Again, that identifies projects. It doesn't necessarily identify funding, but it does identify it as a city-related project. You should have at your seat at the dais budget memo number 3 that's frankly meant to summarize and validate the final budget prior to your formal consideration on September 14th. What I'd like to do is just review this briefly, certainly get your input and additional direction. The first spreadsheet that you see on the memo, the very top portion of that, is the same spreadsheet that was included in budget memo number 2. It outlined, identified those projects that were important to council at that time and funding mechanisms for those. So, for example, in the first 2 lines, we used additional funds out of Fund 68, which is our 2016 CO fund, transferred in so we can purchase a Vector truck. And likewise, similar mechanisms for the retaining walls, purchase of a street sweeper, an increase for completing our water meter project, as well as inputs for a fire apparatus that will have to be matched in future years, as well as the additional funding for the Economic Development Fund. Again, we transfer that money when those funds are needed, but we go ahead and budget them. The modifications that are included in that second set of numbers are a result in savings from the police department and fire department related to refined pricing on communications, as well as phone expense at the FD. Both Vaughn and Chief Smith worked hard to get AT&T to cut some of those expenses that we were incurring. The savings, or the delta on the savings versus the bottom line that we communicated to you at the previous meeting, 217 to 312,000, is about $94,000 improvement. In the next couple of paragraphs, I just wanted to again confirm and seek your input on the approach and what we're looking at for finalizing on the budget. We do want to also recognize that we do have some outstanding planning projects and engineering studies that are being conducted that we know and we recognize will result in capital projects. In previous discussions, we indicated to council that those projects were not included in the FY21 budget, and it was staff's understanding that those projects, identified projects, would be considered when defined, and funding options and sources would be subject to research and negotiation with partners and beneficiaries. So that remains the same. We do want to call out that we're currently awaiting the results of an upper pressure plane capacity and pressure assessment. in a wastewater pretreatment assessment, and then we also recognize that our comprehensive plan may identify additional areas of study or additional projects that we would want to undertake. Compensation, and again, this is to confirm what we've been talking about, but the discussion previously at workshops and during presentations is that we would be able to use some of our budget surplus to address employee compensation and adjustments. At a targeted 3% COLA, that would be a burdened impact to the city of about $195,000. We also feel like there's probably close to about $50,000 worth of market adjustments. Council may recall that the previous budget, we tried to identify those departments that had particular market deficiencies related to law enforcement, as well as the electric department. And so we're looking at probably trying to do the same look at water, wastewater, and some of our other, not exclusively, but taking a look at some of those other areas. Identified and unbudgeted needs, so even with the compensation piece of it, we would still have about a $66,000 surplus. And just to refresh council's memory, some items that we had talked about: part-time utility billing and collection clerk, part-time administrative assistant for the FD, study of city's wastewater interceptor capacity. That's something that Councilman Clark has brought up as a need. And perhaps we could even, might want to park the money into contingency, and at the point in time we get a proposal for example, the interceptor capacity study, you could choose that. We also have referenced previously that we will have some changes at City Hall at the end of the year. And, do we want to wait and take a look at staffing at that time, which would be just a few months away. But we certainly would be interested in council's thought. I'll finish with the last paragraph, and then we can come back to that one if you'd like, Mayor and Council. But we also typically don't, as part of our presentation for the operating budget, don't include the tourism and historic preservation piece of it out of Fund 40. But it is our understanding that we would like to, staff or council would like to fund some improvements for Hostess House, as well as interior renovation of the historic colored school, improvements to Hannah Springs. Retaining walls are already covered under 68. And then also a budget, not necessarily expend, but at least budget some additional funds out of 40 to create venues that would attract out-of-town visitors to events and programs. So even though we budget, the expenditure would obviously be at council discretion, approval, research, et cetera, but at least some money would be budgeted if that's council's wish. But again, the purpose of this workshop item is to simply validate and try to make sure that we're still on the same page in terms of the budget. Be happy to answer any questions.
Does council wish to offer any input or direction with the remaining $66,000?
I would like, as I've stated before, that we start some kind of preliminary engineering depending upon what depth we want to go or how much we can afford to try to figure out what our capacity is in the interceptor program. With the current developments that are going on and the ones that we'll hit next year, we need to have an idea of what we can carry from one side of town to the other, with our wastewater plant being a stationary plant that we're going to do some work on eventually. I think it's very important that we know when we're considering new development what capacities we have available and when we're going to have to budget to attack those, because those will not be cheap.
Do you have an estimated cost, Finley, on said study?
I think the first step in that would be to request a proposal, or request a scope, discuss a scope, and then request a proposal on it. I would, I think we currently have probably 4 to 6 lines that would be classified in that interceptor category. And so it's sizing, it's probably doing some investigation on site to make sure that what we have on the plans is what is in the field. And then,
No, I
We're
was
on the
going to ask
spot,
her,
but
I was going to ask Chief
No,
Bailey to go ahead and
thank you.
step
I
forward.
appreciate that, because I didn't know if you could answer it. I didn't know.
Yeah.
But I was just asked to ask the question, and I didn't know. I thought the COVID time would be the time to ask.
Mayor, council, when we receive a complaint, we go to that location, talk to them about the governor's orders, and ask them for compliance. We've not had to cite anyone, because once we go visit with them, then they comply, once we tell them what they need to do.
So I just need to let these owners that have come to me and asked me different things, that if they see something, then they need to report it to y'all.
They need to report it to us, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council have anything further? Chief Smith? I'm good. Thank you, sir. Item number 6, discussion regarding City of Lampasas skate park.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We all know that, this thing is like, we all know that for several years, the Wings of Eagles organization has been trying to get a skate park built here in Lampasas. And I think the first step in getting that process going is to secure a location, which is the reason we've got this item on the agenda here tonight. Our proposed location at this time is over here at the intersection of Hackberry and East Avenue A, which would be right where the judging used to take place for the barbecue cook-off during Spring Hoe. There's already a 30 by 30 pavilion in that location that they would like to incorporate somehow into their skate park, if we can get that secured. If we can get it secured here this evening, that'll give them the opportunity to go ahead and move forward with planning and possible funding options for the skate park. We've got some members here this evening with the Wings of Eagles, if y'all have got any questions for them, or me.
What was the purpose of picking that specific location?
Are you asking me or the organization?
Whoever can answer.
Well, we looked at several different locations, one of them being in Campbell Park. And I don't, when it went to the LAFTA board, I didn't get to go to the meeting, but when it went to the LAFTA board, I don't think that LAFTA was opposed to having the skate park in Campbell Park, but they didn't want it in the location that we proposed because they have future plans for a pavilion in that location, from what I understand.
Future plans for what?
A pavilion
I
to be
think we had
constructed.
discussed, I think some of the discussions have been,
I thought the
Make it a
pavilion was going to
joint
be on the
project.
other side. That's why we did a bunch of work, right?
Yes, that was my understanding, but I didn't get to attend that meeting. So.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the pavilion was supposed to be on the other side. That's why we moved do you remember what we did? We had to move a bunch of,
Y'all
Well,
did-
we put in electric, we've got a transformer out there and some electric pedestals out near the basketball court.
right.
Right, in anticipation for that, yes.
and now they don't want it there?
Again, I didn't get to attend the meeting, so I'd like to speak with LAFTA if we've got those questions, but
For sure. I
I don't
think,
want to speak out of turn.
Sure.
as y'all know, I'm 100% for a skate park, no doubt. I mean, it needs to happen. But I don't think that that's the best location. There's no bathrooms, and honestly, if there's no bathrooms at any facility anywhere, what's going to happen? They're going to open the door on their car and pee or whatever. That's what's going to happen. I think it needs to be closer to a bathroom, definitely.
We agree with you completely, that location right as you enter.
Please utilize the microphone, I'm sorry.
Sure, girl, sorry. Right as you enter Campbell Park, there on the right, there's a great location, that's what we had identified.
Right
Do you
there.
have that? It's got the restrooms and everything. There seems to be some confusion. That's kind of our understanding with
Right.
LAFTA, that now they want to do pavilions there, but maybe that wasn't part of the original plan, but it is now. So that's why we chose the other location.
This is also the first time I'm hearing of LAFTA having a desired location change for the pavilion, so perhaps we do need to have
Right.
LAFTA come in if they have concerns or want to make
that's-
changes.
That specific spot is in the floodplain also, so it probably wouldn't be a great idea for a pavilion, but would be a fantastic place for a skate park.
Right, right.
I think the skate park needs to be a joint workshop with LAFTA, City Council, and this organization as well. Does council think otherwise?
I'm good with that.
We want to get this going, as Councilman White said. Many of us are a proponent for this project. We have some funding ideas and those sorts of things, but we've got too many people saying they have different opinions, and we all need to come together and hash it out and get it done.
Yeah, we appreciate that. That's exactly what we want. Thank you. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Finley, can we work on getting that together? Thank you. Item number 7, discussion regarding community garden.
Okay, so Ms. Janet Crozier approached us about the idea of building a community garden in one of our city-owned parks. And we looked at multiple locations for a community garden, and I believe the proper location for that at this time would be the old volleyball courts at the north, on the north side of Hannah Springs Swimming Pool. It's already fenced in, it's already got water, it's got electricity, easy access for these folks. It's been completely unutilized for at least 15 years. I think it'd be a good location. And also, Ms. Crozier is in attendance if you have any questions of her. But again, tonight we would just like to get a location secured so she could move forward with some plans.
It's my understanding council would like to hear from Ms. Crozier about the plans for the community garden.
Good evening. These are my plans. I'm sort of a visual person, and I thought you might,
Be sure to get in the microphone. We do have those at home watching.
I thought maybe you'd like to see where we are talking and some of the gardens that we would like to implement. It's not just a garden, a community garden where people just come in and garden. We have a plan for educating gardening to everybody that wants to garden, most especially to the underserved here. I'm working in conjunction with Karen Dizon and her agriculture. Let me think here a minute. She has a program where she's teaching nutrition and healthy eating and a healthy lifestyle, along with our organic gardening setups. And we're planning to do raised beds and also the square foot garden. The square foot garden gives new gardeners who have never had any real experience gardening, it gives them a real chance to have success in that all the materials used are really important to be able to grow immediately and with very little weed intrusion. We've been very busy trying to get our, we got a name. Lampasas Community Gardens is our name. It's registered with the Secretary of State. We've got our IN number, we've got a website, and we've got an email address. We've been talking to some people about funding, and it just seems like we've come at the wrong time in that it's the end of their fiscal year, and they've already allocated a lot of the money that we would need. So our plan is to, as soon as we get approval, we've got 9 board members, we've got a grant writer, we've got a publicity board member, we've got our secretary, our treasurer, and of course Karen as the education director. So this is where we are, and our plan forward is to get our bylaws and start our 501c3. We have applied to be a corporation, a nonprofit corporation.
Maybe agriculture and horticulture, you might want to look at a 501c5. I think you may fall under that category.
Well, we've checked into it, and we were told 501c3 is what the community gardens are doing.
How would you
So there's
plan?
lots of questions,
I'm
so go
sorry.
ahead.
How would you plan to contend with the deer?
We have a fence, a 6-foot fence.
Yeah, but I've got a 6-foot fence.
And you have deer?
Yeah.
Yes.
You think you can?
Chris
So-
said he'd put up another foot or two.
Okay. Okay. Tell me how a community garden would work if I wanted a garden.
Well, first of all, you'll rent a plot. It's not free. However, I'm working at getting a fund set up for gardeners who can't afford it. However, they will be designated a dollar amount for volunteer hours. Volunteer hours, 5 volunteer hours per month is what we're talking about. But if they can't afford their rental plot, they're renting a plot, and the dollar amount will be for 6 months, and that will help to cover some of the materials, maybe not all, but if they can't afford it, like I said, we'll have a fund that will raise to augment some of the cost of what it would cost for their plot. But they will, again, put that much, whatever is assigned to the hours, they will do it in hours instead of money.
Well, tell me about the gardening part of it, though. Like, can I go whenever I want, or
Well-
how big of a spot do I get?
I'm looking, because we have lighting, my plan is to be open or available to them from 8 to 8.
Okay.
We'll have a combination lock on the gate. We'll have, if they've never done this before, especially with the square foot garden, each square foot has a designated number of seeds that go into the square foot. Let me show you. This is a square foot garden, and each of those squares contains either one plant, depending on what you're growing, and then there's a number of seeds that whatever plant you are intending to grow can accommodate that. And I've done the square foot garden before in another community garden, and you get a lot of produce out of a small amount. With a 15 by 15 plot, we can get three 4 by 4 squares in there, and that can provide enough food for a whole season. And because there's very little weeding and that sort of thing, all you need to do is replenish your compost, and we will have a compost bin on site, so for the food scraps, whatever you have to bring in, except for protein. And well-turned, that's another volunteer activity, is keeping up with the compost heap. But
I'm sorry. The maintaining of the area around the plots, is that going to be like the people that are renting that specific plot? Is it going to be the board members?
To further with Ms. Toops' question, I think for clarification purposes, council would like to know, beyond the designation of the property and the extension of the height of the fence, is there any responsibility that is put onto the city of Lampasas or our Parks Department?
water, perhaps.
The cost of water?
Yeah.
Obviously, you'd have to have some sort of sprinkler system.
Irrigation. I'm getting quotes on that. I've looked into getting a shed, a tool shed for us. That'll cost about $1,500. I'm looking at the soils, like especially if we could do 20 plots of square foot, that would cost us about $4,000.
But your fundraising efforts are to cover those costs, correct?
Yes, yes. I spoke to USDA, and there is a new program they have out for new community gardens. And I was told that, in fact, they want to come down and see the spot and take a look at it. But what I told him, what we were doing, he told me that they have 4 different grants that we could apply for, and it's a total of $18,000. Unfortunately, we won't get it until next year. So,
Mr. Eicher, are you aware of anything else besides the property and the fencing and then their request for possible water?
I have told them that we would help them with the initial setup just because we don't want vehicles driving through Campbell Park to get to that location. We would use our dump trailers to bring in their initial loads of compost and things like that to mitigate any problems with people running over sculptures or sidewalks or anything like that.
Do we have a water source relatively close?
Right there.
It's right there.
What are your plans for policing the use, meaning amongst your members of your garden and those who are curious?
we want curious. We want curious. We want people to see what we're doing. We're going to have demonstration gardens. We want them to see it, to participate in it. We want people that really need good, healthy food. We've noticed that when you're eating healthy, your immune system is increased, and you're not as sick.
I'm assuming community gardens work on an honor system. I don't want the city to find themselves in the middle of mitigating arguments over zucchini, so.
I'll come and smack them. No, we're forming our bylaws now and our site rules, which will address all the issues. No animals in there unless they're service animals. You can't plant something that will overtake the plot and interfere with your neighbor's garden. You can't you can't plant tall, vegetables that will interfere with the sun getting to their plot. There's not much chance of that. It's a very big space, and we'll have more than enough spacing between the plots to accompany that.
Does council have any additional questions? Staff? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 8 is discussion regarding any item on the regular agenda. Does council wish to discuss any item that we will take up later this evening? Do I have a motion to adjourn the workshop session?
So moved.
Second.
Seeing as we are going to adjourn into executive session, let's go ahead and move on in. I'll call to order the special session. Do I have a motion to adjourn into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
A motion is second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Do I have a motion from council?
I make a motion to give the city manager permission to go into negotiations with the candidate.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn special session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Also unanimous. At this time, we'll call to order the regular session of the governing body of the city of Lampasas. If we would all rise at this time. Chief Bailey, if you would please lead us in invocation.
Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, Satan is working overtime to put fear in the lives of all in this world. Lord, we ask that you give us strength and courage to overcome those fears. Lord, we ask that you continue to watch over our community, watch over our teachers and our children and those in our school system. Lord, just keep our community safe and keep our community well. Lord, we ask that you guide us tonight and direct us to your will. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
We don't have any presentations or proclamations this evening, but before we go any further on the agenda, I do want to once again give out the phone number for those who are watching from home. If you wish to reach us here in council chambers, the phone number is 512-556-0332. Item 1.1, public hearing, citizens' comments. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter not included on the agenda may do so at this time. The city council may not deliberate on items presented under this agenda item. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on an item not included on the agenda? I myself am actually going to take an opportunity to present for discussion and see if council has an interest in having a conversation. I don't know if any of you are aware, there is a trend going on right now in regards to businesses choosing not to accept cash as a form of payment for services or goods sold. It is my understanding, while that is not federally illegal, you can have state or local ordinances or laws that prevent locally from this sort of thing from taking place. I believe it's important that the city of Lampasas present itself as an all-inclusive economy. I don't think we need to have establishments refusing to take cash, which is the legal currency of the United States of America. I don't believe that we should be, as a city, a place where minors should have to have a debit card or credit card in order to purchase a bean burrito. I don't believe that any individual should be required to have an electronic transaction of any purchase they make. And whether or not we're the first in Texas, I'm not quite sure, but I am in full support of us looking into our legal options and passing an ordinance that prevents businesses in the city of Lampasas from refusing to accept cash. If you also are in agreement with that, please get with Finley and let him know so we can get that on a future agenda. Item 1.2, citizens' comments. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter that is included on the agenda may do so at this time. Is there anyone who wishes to speak about an item that is included on tonight's agenda? Moving on, 2.0 minutes. 2.1, discussion and possible action concerning approval of minutes of the regular meeting on August 10th, 2020.
I didn't notice any mistakes. I will move to approve the minutes.
I do have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. 3.0 consent agenda. 3.1 discussion and possible action regarding the monthly investment report for July 2020. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We don't get out of here if we don't start making motions. 4.0 boards and department reports. Up this evening, 4.1 fire department. That would be you, Chief Smith.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have an interruption. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. I will, considering the fact that we've gone long tonight and several people have urged me to keep this brief. I only have 2 pages of notes. I'm fully prepared to elaborate on them. I'll answer any questions afterwards. There is a lot of information here and I'm ready to give you, but if y'all feel comfortable about it, I'll move right along. A year ago, I addressed y'all for the first time, and I'd been here 1 month. And I was very excited at that time, and I'm still excited to be here now. I think that it would be hard-pressed for me to say that at that time we thought that we would be looking through 2020, and we could even come close to imagining all that we've been through together. So I'm kind of laying that out there for a little bit of forgiveness too, maybe on some of the things that we didn't get to accomplish in this past year that I was hoping that we could have accomplished. So the numbers, we've had 1,035 incidents in the city of Lampasas in this last year. This is August 24th of last year till now, just over 1,000. Fire department has also responded to another 396 requests for assistance throughout the county. Of these 1,035 incidents here, 947 of them have been rescue or emergency medical incidents. This would include motor vehicle collisions. 152 fire calls, this is throughout the county. This includes 6 structure fires located within the city of Lampasas. We did have 1 fatality due to a fire here in the city of Lampasas. Best part of the information here, we had 2 members that we've added to the fire department in the last year. We had 2 members leave. We've hired 2 young personnel, Lane Lewis and Shane Wolf, are both members of the Lampasas Fire Department now. And then the most exciting news of all, we've added 2 more members to the Lampasas Fire Department family. A couple of months ago, Tyler Gillis and his wife had a baby boy. And then just last month, driver engineer Colton Baker and his wife had a little girl. So that's the best news out of this past year as far as additions to the Lampasas Fire Department. A few items that we do want to brag about. As you know, we've started the high school off this year, and we do have a fire and an EMT program out at the high school. I was able to go out there for a week long and teach a few classes. Actually had your daughter in the class. She wouldn't tell me originally, but I guess she caved in. Maybe you told her to give me a hard time or whatever. But that's very exciting for that. A couple things that we have been able to get in place of working with different city, with IT, with Yvonne through finance and everything like that. We're trending toward updating some of the infrastructure that we have as far as our records keeping, what we do, how we check out all of our equipment, that type of stuff. We've recently upgraded and purchased some new software that allows us to do that. Most of this is cloud-based. Some of the stuff that we've gotten into is actually cheaper than what we had and provides us with more things. That's where Yvonne and I get along real well. I try to save the money for the city on that aspect. I think it's very important that we maintain getting good quality continuing education, that we get a lot of bang for our buck with our reporting systems. We've added some upgrades to those, but we've actually saved money along the way with that. That's always exciting to us. This past year, we focused on getting all of our firefighters in the same gear and in good gear. And I know that sounds but we're all wearing the same footwear. We're all wearing Nomex pants now. We're all wearing T-shirts and uniform shirts that look alike. And that was a big ordeal. That was a big undertaking. That was something that took a while, especially with COVID, to try to accomplish, trying to get them to even get pants. We didn't get those until about June of this year, and I've been working on it since October of last year with everything shut down. Things that did not go as planned this year due to COVID. Our public education had a lot of plans. We had talked a lot about doing CPR classes, first aid classes, AED classes, stop the bleed classes out in the community. Not just have you come up to the fire station or anything like that. Getting the community involved and coming here to the Calvert building and doing those types of classes. Being more involved out at Hoff Hours whenever it's starting up hunting season. People are coming in and out, do a stop the bleed class. Any type of public education that we can do when we get to have a chance to be in front of the public, it benefits the city and it benefits the fire department. There's a lot of things that we can do as far as just quick first aid that can be helpful in an instance like that. Another one of the things that we didn't get to go fully through, our emergency management training. And you kind of look at that and you go, well, I thought we were kind of doing that. Yeah, we are kind of doing that on the fly. It would have been a lot nicer to have some of this stuff going into COVID, that we were aware of what was going on and kind of the checks and balances and how it works with the county and the state and the federal government going along with that. We can obviously come back and revisit that, but there are some basic classes that everybody within the city needs to have, and we're trying to get it accomplished to where everybody does have those classes. With people being hired, people leaving, it's hard to stay on top of that, so we do have some that we need to get trained in all that. We'd actually planned on doing an exercise with city council and staff as far as emergency management, but I think we can probably check the books that we've done that exercise now after COVID. I've completed a rough rewrite of the City Lampasas Emergency Management Plan. The various annexes need to go out to all the department heads. I'd fully hoped to have that done to where we could submit it at a time like this and say, hey, this is what we're pushing forward with. But in all honesty, with writing through that, with all that we've been doing, I just haven't had the time to do that. And I apologize for that, but we're working on that. We missed out on a lot of training for our personnel. Day-to-day training in the fire service is essential, even on Saturdays and Sundays. There's always training that can be done, always books to read, video to read, whatever. We've been focused on trying to accumulate X amount of hours each month that allows us to gain certain goals as far as when our ISO rating and that type of stuff. One of those investments in the updating of our software has been in tracking our training, tracking our day-to-day training, the things that we do, checking out equipment, that type of stuff. I want that type of documentation in there so that I come up here and I go, here's what we do. We're not just down there mowing the yard. We're not just down there cooking breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We're not down there playing cards and dominoes or anything like that. I want that type of stuff so that you can see how we do utilize man hours. There's 96 man hours a day for us. We know that we need to utilize this. We do things, and they've been doing things long before I got here. It's simply a matter of how do we capture that documentation to prove to you what it is that we're doing while we're down there. And that's something that I wish we could have done, but it's hard to implement with everything that's going on around you. I'm almost through, Mandy. Volunteer fire department. I know the volunteer fire department was a big question coming in to all this, especially after last year. We've changed a lot as far as the volunteer training, where they train on Tuesday nights. What used to happen, now we've changed that up. It's required a little bit more time from myself and from the fire marshal. We actually had a person that was in charge of doing that, and he had asked to step out of that position. The fire marshal and I have taken that over. I don't think it has anything to do with the fire marshal and I being there, but I think it has to do with the fact that we've increased a lot of accountability. We've increased a lot of the expectations with the volunteers. We've given them a lot of information and said, hey, look, we need y'all to take more aggressive participation in the volunteer fire department. You are here to respond to calls. You're here to respond initially and to support us in the calls that we do. And in doing that, we've had an increased amount of new volunteers. We've had an increased amount of people coming to training on Tuesday nights, and we've had an increased amount of people showing up for calls. Some people might have thought, hey, you expect more out of them, or you have more accountability with them, you're going to run them off. I don't think that's it. I think when you tell them, hey, look, come up here once a week and check out the equipment. That's y'all's equipment. Check it out. Make sure. Take ownership in that. When something needs to be fixed on that, you let us know, and we'll make sure that it gets done. And we show them the steps to go through in doing that. They have a sense of ownership in that, and they have a sense of pride in that. So far, it is shown to be very productive and very good thing. The fire marshal's office, he kind of dropped on his regular routine during COVID. We did not do any of the annual inspections that he typically would do. We did this for obvious reasons. We have businesses that were just trying to stay afloat, that are struggling, trying to figure out, how am I going to do this? We didn't feel like it was a good idea for the fire marshal to go in there and say, hey, you need to be sure and have your fire extinguisher, sir. It was a dove. We didn't feel, you okay? Good windows. So anyways, we didn't have the fire extinguisher doing his annual inspections at this time. We just didn't feel like that was going to be right, and we also didn't feel like putting the fire marshal into a situation where he could be exposed to COVID at the time. Since then, we've gotten back into the routine. During that time, he did do construction inspections, getting people their certificates of occupancy so that they could live in their homes, so that they could do their businesses, that type of stuff. He also took care of any fire and safety life issues that we became aware of by way of a citizen complaint or anything like that. The last item, as far as in the fire marshal's office, we're about to go to a tablet-based inspection. We've been working with Tyler Gillis here again that had the young son. They've developed the same form that the fire marshal's always used. We have that in our emergency reporting system now to where it all links up together. It'll all be done on a tablet. When he comes into your business, he's going to inspect it. He'll get all your information right then and there with a tablet. He'll email you that report. It makes things that much better. It gets the copies out there. And yes, this is something that the fire marshal wanted to do, and he was on board with doing that. So those are all upgrades that we've been doing in the fire marshal's office. Last but not least, in closing, I've enjoyed the first year. I'm not running away. I'm not leaving. I like it still. I look forward to it. I think that me personally, I've made a lot of good contacts within the city for the fire department, for my wife and I. I do love it here. We're still in the process of remodeling the house. hopefully we'll get the last bathroom done and then I don't have to do that anymore. But other than that, if y'all have any questions of me, I'd love to take those at this time, and I hope I didn't take up too much of your time.
Thanks, Chief. We're very, very glad to have you. Item 5.0, routine matters. 5.1, city manager's operational report.
Just a few brief comments, Mayor and City Council. Last Wednesday, the mayor and staff met with representatives from the Lampasas Heritage Foundation to discuss their vision and perhaps some opportunities, primarily through the private through private investment, but also some possibilities that the city may wish to explore, including possible abatements and relaxing some building codes. Their notes are attached. I think it was a productive meeting, and look forward to their stewardship of some of our historic assets. Recognition, pleased to announce that Becky Sims has received her certification as a Texas Registered Municipal Clerk. She started taking classes about 5 years ago, which culminated in the recognition this July. It's a very comprehensive and extensive coursework, and including seminars and home study, et cetera. And anyway, we certainly would like you to take the opportunity to congratulate her on her accomplishment. The letter is attached on that. Comp plan, we are in the process of scheduling up to, we think, about 4 small group meetings to take another bite out of the review process for the recommendation and goal statements chapter. This will be primarily a review of the information that was gathered through focus groups, surveys, town hall meetings, and we are still hopeful that we can meet a target of bringing a plan to you for your consideration this fall. Hillside Acres, just as a note, you did approve a preliminary plat extension at the previous meeting. We are working on a development agreement that is being drafted that would outline responsibilities related to utility extensions, construction, bonding, annexation, and life safety requirements. So as those items come together, we will be bringing that back to council for your consideration. Last item, Kempner Water Supply Corp. We are continuing to work with them on a possible wheeling agreement. The one thing that I will tell council is that we will not jeopardize any part of our current contract in terms of this agreement. We have asked them for certain information that, one, they've either ignored or they have no responsive documents for in terms of claims that they've made. That being said, we continue to work together, for example, on the lightning storm and those service issues. We work very cooperatively and very professionally with. We will overcome this, and we continue to work on it. Any questions? Thank you.
Finley, is there any way that we can finalize this deal with Kempner so you can quit messing with it?
We've offered the finalization.
Just charge them.
You know, this has obviously been gone on longer than I'd certainly like, and we've certainly spent a fair amount of resources on this. I think that we have acted in a very fair manner, and so we will continue to work on it until it comes to a resolution.
I concur. 5.2, mayor's comments. This evening I don't have any. I'm afraid somebody will throw something at the back of my head. 6.0, unfinished business, none of that as well. 7.0, new business. 7.1, discussion and possible action regarding pole attachment agreements with NextLink.
Mayor and council. This is an agreement with NextLink. The ISPs, which is NextLink, have provided a majority of documentation required within the application and have agreed to the terms of the agreement. Therefore, the staff seeks the latitude to finalize the agreements conditional upon the requirements of the application being made. We have copies of the agreement if you'd like to see them. But at this time, my recommendations are recommend a motion to authorize the city manager to negotiate and finalize the pole attachment agreements upon submission of application requirements, and this is for NextLink.
Do you have a motion so that we can open this item for discussion?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Questions or comments from council? I think we've kind of been talking pole attachment agreements for a while, so
It's been going on for a while.
no questions?
Any questions?
All right, currently have a motion and a second to authorize the city manager to negotiate and finalize pole attachment agreement upon submission of application requirements. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Item 7.2, discussion and possible action regarding pole attachment agreement with roll call.
Okay, Mayor and Council, it's basically the same thing. The ISPs have provided a majority of documentation required within the application and agreed to the terms in the agreements, and therefore staff seeks the latitude to finalize the agreements conditional upon requirements of the application being complete. We also have copies of that agreement. The recommendation is to recommend a motion to authorize the city manager to negotiate and finalize pole attachment agreement upon submission of application requirements. Any questions?
Do I have a motion to open this item for discussion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Questions or comments from council or staff?
I was just going to add, most of the items that from both NextLink and roll call that we've required through the city's application process has been submitted. So there may be a couple remaining items that we're waiting for, but we feel like the agreement and everything is in place.
And they're understanding that that's all we're waiting on. Sure.
Yeah. And they're both, moving about the same. They're ready to come into the city. So I think things are going to happen. That's good for the city. Any questions?
Anything else from council? I currently have a motion and a second to recommend a motion to authorize the city manager to negotiate and finalize pole attachment agreement upon submission of application requirements with roll call. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. 7.3, discussion and possible action regarding the lease of 40 electric Yamaha rental carts and 2 gasoline Yamaha utility carts at Hancock Park Golf Course.
Mayor and council, it's that time. It's been 3 years. We lease our carts, our rental carts from Yamaha. And what this is, it's for a 36-month lease for 40 electric golf carts and 2 gas utility carts. The price for the 40 golf carts is $35,712 a year. The 2 utility carts are $2,877.60 for a total of $35,589.60 annually. This is budgeted, and this won't go in effect until for next year's budget because my lease is up in October. Just wanting to get this done. And these carts do bring in, well, let me back up. The lease did go up about $2,300 than it did from 3 years ago. Which was kind of to be expected. The only thing different with these carts, they are going to have windshields on them, which I didn't really realize that. And I called the guy, and he's like, that's about $1 a cart. So, and I do have a lot of people requesting windshields. So, and most golf courses you go to have them. But these carts bring in anywhere from, depending on play, $90,000 to $92,000 to $98,000 annually on the lease. So, and Yamaha did turn in the bid, and they are on the buy board, and it's on the specs back here. They did give me a price on some gas carts, but to do gas carts was just going to be too much. It was a little bit cheaper, but then you got to get a gas tank put up and all that stuff. So we opted to go with electric carts. We've had these for 20-something years. I'm guessing I've had, very, very few problems with them. They're great carts. If anything goes wrong with them, they come and repair them. If there's any warranty parts, they come and do it. No problem. They've been very, very good carts. So I recommend this item to Yamaha Golf Cart Company.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Comments or questions from council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you, Van.
Thank you.
Item 7.4, discussion of possible action concerning the audit engagement letter for the City of Lampasas current fiscal year, which began October 1, 2019, and will end September 30th, 2020.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is our annual audit engagement letter. It will be for the fiscal year ending 2020 with Singleton Clark and Company. It did go up $800 from last year, just as a regular increase, and I will have a different auditor this year that I've worked with 3 or 4 years in the past, and it will probably be done part of it virtual instead of in person this year because of COVID.
Motion from council?
Recommend approval.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That
Thank
is
you.
unanimous. Thank you, Yvonne. Item 7.5, discussion of possible action regarding Economic Development Corporation budget for fiscal year 2020 through 2021.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Last Wednesday, the EDC met, August 19th, and approved the attached budget for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. And we're just asking for a motion, to consider a motion to approve the EDC budget.
We have a motion from council?
Recommend
So
approval.
move. Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilman White and a second from Councilman Clark. Questions or comments from council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
That is unanimous. Thank you, Mandy. Item 7.6, discussion of possible action regarding the City of Lampasas Skate Park. I do believe council indicated during workshop that we'd like to have a workshop with LAFTA and that organization. If you have anything else you want to add,
No, ma'am.
then we'll look forward to that in the future. Thank you, sir.
Perfect.
Item 7.7, discussion of possible action regarding community garden.
This is a follow-up from our workshop session, and we're asking council to consider a motion to approve the location of the proposed community garden and allow staff to coordinate the planning and development of that garden.
Have a motion from council?
Recommend approval.
Second.
Have a second?
I think that's an awesome idea.
I entrust you to handle that.
We'll do it.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Crozier. 7.8, discussion to seek permission to move forward with Cardinal tracking systems to start implementation of the Cardinal software project for CAD mobile to be installed.
Mayor, Council, we have the CAD software system in our 2021 budget. We would like to provide signatures so we can go ahead and implement that project now and then provide them with a letter telling them when we will pay them after the beginning of the 2021 budget. So we seek a motion for approval to provide signature promise and that we'll pay them for the work that they do now.
Have a motion from council? Have to have a
I have a
motion.
question.
I have to have a motion to open it for discussion.
Okay.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
I just have a question. Can we approve something before the budget's approved? To spend it?
Finley, did you hear Mr. Clark's question?
I think under this circumstance, you can, because it's just an intention.
We have a long-standing history with Cardinal tracking, and so they're just asking for our signature to say that we will pay them once the budget's approved.
I don't think there's a trust issue. I think Mr. Clark's just making sure we're following
I don't have any problem with it. I
procurement
just wanted to make
procedures.
sure it was legal.
I respect that. And Finley and Yvonne, you both say yes? I do have a motion and a second. Any additional questions or comments from council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Thank
I have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second from Councilman White. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Good night.